Thanks for tuning in. I'm Joel Amidon.
And I'm Ann Monroe.
And this is The Road to Better Teaching, a podcast series where we discuss stories of teacher development. Hey.
We're back.
We're back.
On the road again.
On the
road again.
We promised no singing.
Who promised?
I don't know.
I don't know about that.
Yeah.
I got a great story about that song. That song was really popular when I was growing up in the early 80s. And my mom was a very busy lady. She had 5 children and ran a nonprofit, among other things. And she was always on the phone. So we changed the lyrics for my mother and used to sing to her, "On the phone again."
On the phone again.
On the phone again. She just can't wait to get on the phone again.
We're on the microphone again.
We are.
There we go. And we've decided to shorten up a few things. We changed the name of the podcast, but everything is the same. We're still talking about mile markers on the road to better teaching, but it's the road to better. It's the road to better teaching.
Just the road to better teaching.
It's just the road to better teaching. Sometimes you just editors need a good editor in your life.
Yep.
So Ann, we're here to talk about season 1. It's in the books.
Wow.
Yeah.
We had a couple of Emmy nominations. The Grammys overlooked us.
That's right. I'm still waiting from...
we did win the Emmys.
For Spotify to send, I don't know, whatever, the grand spot, I don't know what that would be.
Is it like a check for how many listeners we had?
How many listeners? I don't know. But that's why we're assigning this to every class that we teach here.
Yeah, that's right.
Anyway,
that's ethical.
That's right. So we thought as the first episode to season 2 that we'd come together and talk about kind of an overview of last season and talk about the lessons we learned, things that were eye-opening to us. And so one, that's what made this experience cool, is that we got to learn and hear all these stories. And then 2, we get to share them with the listeners out there. And so we're just going to go back and forth, share some learnings. And this will be kind of the kickoff episode to season 2 of The Road to Better Teaching.
Great. Looking forward to it.
All right. So who wants to go first? You want to go first?
Sure. Okay. So just something that, after thinking about the episodes from last year, season 1, and all the folks that we got to listen to, and we had several pre-service teachers that we spoke to at different levels, beginning their journey as a teacher, finishing up their pre-service teacher experience as seniors, and then even talking to faculty members who'd been teaching for decades. And one thing that stood out to me was a common theme that's really important to me. So I noticed it. Mm-hmm. So many people talking about the emotional well-being of students. And yes, they were talking about their content, they were talking about teaching strategies and things, but there was a lot of mentioning and discussion around creating a positive emotional space for children in the classroom. Just off the top of my head, we had conversations with Brandy at the DeSoto campus.
Yeah,
talked
Brandy
to her.
Thomas.
Yeah, Brandy Thomas. Her really entire podcast was about that. But also other people that touched on the importance of meeting your kids' emotional needs in the classroom. And so because that's important to me and something that I think about a lot, that stood out as sort of a common theme across many of the podcast episodes. So it's just an important piece of teaching, regardless of what you're teaching.
Yeah.
Or who you're teaching, or what level you're teaching, whether you're teaching college-age students or kindergartners or 6th graders or, 18-year-olds in high school.
Right.
That was a common thread through a lot of conversations that we had. So that's probably the first thing that stood out to me when I was going back and thinking about season 1.
Yeah. Well, and also, I guess connecting with that was and I have a lot of like the power of sort of statements. And one of them was the power of being seen.
Yes.
I think it was Kayla Luke talking about like seeing her kindergarten teacher in the grocery store and almost crying just from the
It was at the Target.
Oh, it was at the Target.
She ran into her at the Target and just saw her face and got emotional.
Yeah. So like, and so that was like seeing of the teacher, but also just, we heard the statement like, this teacher saw me when we talked about the powerful, like just, so that, I mean, that talks about like, not just, seeing them as a as a student in the classroom in the sea of faces, but actually seeing the person and who they are and their interests and their, building, and like we talk about, building those relationships with the students in order to be the best teacher that you can for them. And then, because we heard that multiple times.
We
like,
did.
That teacher saw me.
I think that's such to me, a powerful way to say that they saw me. And I think, like you said, it speaks about seeing me in a lot of different ways, but seeing my needs, seeing what I come to the table with, seeing me as a whole person, as somebody that's valued. And I think that such a powerful message. I remember when Kayla said that early in the season, it really it made me emotional.
Yeah.
But so, yeah, I think that's part of that piece. I think that I was seeing that thread, that pattern of the importance of connecting emotionally with your students as a person.
Yeah. And I guess that's something like we talk about every now and then. Like, that's what makes this job. I love this job, and that's what also makes it hard too. It's like you get these, and we had a conversation. I think we talked about it in the podcast, but we definitely had it in our class where, we talked about some people like being upset and sad, about just having a rough day, and it's like, and I guess you're going to have these highs, but you're also going to have these lows in being a teacher because you are having these emotional connections, and so it can get emotional.
Yeah, it's a job where you're interacting with humanity on a daily basis.
Yeah, but it's cool to have a job that you care about so much, because there's so many people that they don't.
Yeah,
and so
I wouldn't want a job where I couldn't connect with someone on a human level on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And I think that was all, I think the people that we talked to last season, they all had that desire and need themselves for human connection, which I think makes them, sets them up to be a great teacher.
Yeah.
Or they already are a great teacher.
Absolutely.
What about you, Joel? What did you notice?
Well, I just did the last one. I did be seen.
Oh, the be seen. You tagged mine.
I tagged
be
you.
Seen. Okay,
Yeah,
well, I got another one.
Okay.
So this was interesting, and I felt also a thread that ran through several of the stories that we heard last season. The importance of professional development to pre-service teachers and in-service teachers.
Yeah.
That sometimes and oftentimes really quality professional development can change the trajectory of somebody's career. We saw this with Candice Cook.
Yep.
And her experience with the
Project Prime, Project Delta.
Project Delta. We heard it, I believe, with
Patches,
Calhoun. We heard it with Austin Jones talking about Sunflower County Freedom Project, and that was obviously a volunteer piece, but he had some professional development with that training, et cetera.
Yeah.
And he talked about some other things, some other professional developments. But we had Hannah Farnlocker come in and talk about your class and what she learned about the
instructional triangle.
The instructional triangle. And so that stood out to me as something unexpected. And I guess it shouldn't have been unexpected, but I just assumed that a lot of people would be coming and talking about an experience they had with a child, like a one-on-one experience or something like that. But they really spoke about how those professional development opportunities changed the way they either thought about teaching or actually changed their teaching style in terms of like candies or patches and I think Nicole Robertson was even talking a little bit when she talked to us about some of the
professional development opportunities,
professional development opportunities that impacted her and changed the way she started the things she was delving into with AP sciences and looking at some of the areas she'd never looked at before, things she had never taught before. So that was fascinating to me. And as someone who trains teachers, it's really nice to hear that.
Yeah.
That those things are impactful and people are listening and they are looking to improve and really grabbing onto some of those opportunities.
So that ties in with and I'm not going to piggyback again, but I was just thinking of we were both teachers where sometimes we went to professional development opportunities that we might not have necessarily selected, and the quality of them could have been debatable.
Right.
But I remember my friend Courtney Kessler. She would talk about it's not a professional development. I'm not going to a professional development. I get the opportunity to develop as a professional. And
that's a good way of looking at it.
So like having that posture of I have an opportunity to develop today, and how do I receive that? Because who knows, like, if Hannah was in a random 352 class and that happened to be a moment, or, the Project Prime had like so many different instances where it was, I remember with Patches, she identified a single problem that was like, oh, the locker problem. Oh my gosh, that changes my ideas about teaching. And it's like, if you're not ready for those, if you're not leaning into those moments, I mean, those moments could pass you by. That's, thinking about now, that could be the moment that you're shopping on your your phone or something.
Yeah.
You totally missed it. You missed a mile marker, right?
Well, yeah, and the phrasing you just said that was it's an opportunity for me to develop professionally, puts the person in an active mode of receiving, instead of sometimes when we say professional development, it's a passive mode of getting through it.
Yeah.
and for that's because there are a lot of professional developments, workshops or opportunities that are presented at schools that teachers maybe aren't getting as much out of because they don't have a lot of choice.
Right.
And I think it's more of the structure of how that works, and that there's so many other things teachers need to do during the time period where these professional developments are offered, like set up their classrooms, get ready for the kids. And so I think, and if you do look back, now that you said that, Joel, if you look back at the folks that spoke to us last season, all the professional developments that were mentioned, with maybe the exception of a class like that Hannah took, were chosen.
Oh, yeah.
So
good.
Even now that I think about it, my podcast, where I talked about the Dinah Zyke workshop that I went to as a first-year teacher, that was something I chose to do. Remember, I had to take off a day, and I didn't even know how to take off a day. How do I ask to take off to go to this professional development? But that was a choice. So I think that's powerful, too, and something for
that's a good point.
Folks that work with teachers to think about, is that when you give teachers the choice of where and how they want to develop in what areas, it's more powerful.
Yeah, a little agency.
And they come to it with a stance of action instead of a passive stance.
Yeah, because on the road to better teaching, it's better to drive than just to get on the bus.
That's right. We always say that because life is a highway, Joel.
There you go. on the road again.
I want to drive it.
Drive it. Yeah, that's right.
All day long. But yeah, so that's interesting. Yeah, I love what your friend said. So it's an opportunity for me to develop professionally.
Right.
That's great.
Mm-hmm. So I'll use that sometimes, like if we're not having class, like, oh, so we don't have class. No, you have an opportunity to develop as a professional in whatever way you see fit. You mean we don't have class? So, that happens very rarely. Anyway, so, but I guess this does tie in. I guess we have some similar minds, but I just talked about the power of moments, right? So it was like the power of professional development, but like the power of moments in developing, and just thinking about that from a teacher's perspective, as a teacher of teachers' perspective, or just as a teacher, that's like, again, leaning into those things and seeing like, what might happen today and being open to those possibilities. And I think sometimes we're, especially like, we've taught the same classes several times, and you get kind of like a way of thinking about and predicting some things. But even like the other day, I was doing a math problem that I was introduced to by Meg Meyer, and I do it in class in order to show students like this. It's really a different way of thinking about like systems of equations. Not to bore the audience here, but yeah, exactly. No, it's great. It's a great problem, and I've done it several times. And I remember my colleague, or Meg Meyer, who introduced it to me. She had done it like for years. She actually was one of the designers of the curriculum, and I remember when she would do it with my methods class when I was a doc student, teaching doc student at Wisconsin. Like, she would come in and do that problem. And I remember seeing the excitement on her face every time, because she's like, somebody always does something a little bit different. And like, is always like leaning into it. And so thinking about, and even too, this past week, it's like someone in my class, like they did something I hadn't seen before. And it was like, it was pretty neat. And
Love
it's like,
that.
and it's like being open to those moments and the power of moments. There's a book by Chip and Dan Heath that's called The Power of Moments that I talked about on my other podcast. But in there are several examples. One of them is from schools where people create these moments for their students, but it's like one of them is like where the big buildup for this one class is to hold this court case about some literary figure, and they kind of have a mock court, but it's the big buildup, and people come and watch it, and it's like it's this landmark thing for these kids, and it's like it's a designed moment that can happen, but then also too just knowing that those moments can happen on a day-to-day basis as well.
Well, that's something I thought about looking back at the season. It's very similar to what you're saying, that you never know what has an impact on a teacher to make them think differently about their teaching or try something different. So it's kind of this, you said it better in saying about the moments. But I was just sort of thinking
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. You never know what's going to impact somebody. Like, it was the locker problem for Patches. It was something else for someone else. It was the instructional triangle for Hannah Farnlocker. And you never know.
Yeah.
And everybody is so different. And what a takeaway they have or a moment, they may have a moment where somebody else doesn't really have a moment, or it doesn't, ring as clearly to them as it does to someone else. So, making sure people have lots of varied opportunities. And it's what we teach our teachers to do in their classroom is, you never know what's going to get through to somebody and work for one person and then may not work for the next person. Yeah. So that was something I picked up. It's just you never know.
So going along with that, and given that, I know your research is on shame, like we were talking about the power of moments from a positive direction too. You can also think about it from a negative direction.
Oh, yes.
And so,
I do.
And so I guess, we've heard those positive things, but we also want to think like, hey, moments are powerful. So even like it's just one comment or one off moment that could be powerful. Not to put a lot of stress on people, but like just to make known like the moments count. All the moments count.
Yes, and you don't know how someone's going to take something, and being very careful about how you say things, what you say, how someone might take your words, or especially with the power we yield as teachers.
Yes.
It's so important to be careful about how we communicate to our students and what we're communicating, because we do have the, exceptional power to do good, and unfortunately exceptional power to harm if we're not careful. So, and even with best intentions, sometimes we can do things that aren't so great for kids. So just being very careful about that. But yeah, you're right. We have to think about the good and the bad.
Yep. And then, I had another one. Do you have another one?
Go ahead.
All right. I was going to talk about the I see in you statements. So, and this was not necessarily from the episode, but like you think about the people, and we reached out. Yeah. Yeah.
Sounds good.
Yeah, reached out.
I'll check with my grammar specialist later, but you're asking the wrong person.
To our colleagues, and ask for like people to send folks our way. And you think about like the I see in you statements of like that, the people that were selected, like, or even the folks that we selected too, like the I see in you, and I'd like you to come share this.
Yes.
And, and it's almost like we could be doing that more. Like, not that everyone needs to be invited to a podcast, but like thinking about the power of like I see in you this ability or these assets, and for the classroom or for to become on a podcast, but even just as professional to professional. Like, I see that you do this really well. Okay, can you share with me about that?
Yes, learning from each other.
Right.
I think that's a lesson for us in the School of Education, or just generally in teacher training. Our students come to us with a lot of experience. They've been in the classroom themselves very recently as a student. They're in their field placements. They're listening to all sorts of people talking to them, and providing experiences around teaching. So they're in the middle of it. They're in the thick of it. They have ideas. And just like you said, I see this in you, and we were able to hear from people that, like Brandy Thomas in DeSoto, that I was extremely impressed with. I didn't know who she was. And she's saying things that are exactly what I'm constantly talking about, what I'm thinking about with my research, what I find is the most important thing.
Yeah.
And she's exemplifying it. She's, personifying it in the best way possible. I didn't even know her.
Yeah.
Because I didn't have an opportunity to interact. But because one of her professors said this would be a great person to talk to,
Yeah.
I get the opportunity to hear from somebody like that who's going to be a phenomenal educator and learn from her. And because someone said, you have something of value to share, we need to hear from you.
Yeah.
So we need to take those lessons in teacher education and do more listening from our pre-service teachers. What are they telling us? What do they have to say?
Teaching, yeah. What
are they
teaching
us?
Yeah.
I love that idea, Joel. Sort of like, you need to hear from the student of mine. They've got things to share. That I would love to see more and more us do more of that.
Yeah.
Showcase, like a showcase.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, and the thing too, I guess, is this podcast is meant to parallel the process of developing artifacts for our portfolios that our undergraduate candidates and some of our MED and ed leadership candidates are doing, and to identify these moments of their teaching and reflect on it. And so that can be hard, especially when you are in the weeds. Like you've just had the experience, you just had something like, and to have somebody on your side next to you to not only say like, I see in you this experience or whatever, but hey, I think you just had a moment, and you just like helping people out, especially too. And it's not just to complete a portfolio, but it's also to help folks see like, no, something significant happened here. Like the way you're talking about this, the way you're talking about this instance, the way you're talking about this student, it's like there's a shift here that happened. And to help to be colleagues that help each other like see that sort of perspective. Like I know, like, just in talking about our relationship and some of the work that we've been doing, I mean, I think a lot more about like the role of shame and how to minimize or mitigate it within an environment to help make sure that, think about, was it Nathanson's compass of shame and all that. And so like all that to helping me and develop as a teacher educator, but then, thinking about it, because we get opportunities to talk back and forth about these sorts of situations, but having that partner, that teaching partner, those peers, and we see our teacher candidates, they're always talking to each other, but to be that kind of mirror for them to say, hey, I see that this seemed like a pretty cool thing that just happened. It's not just like that was a good lesson. Like I think you had a growth moment there. And like those are good because that also feeds into, hey, I made progress. Like I'm getting better.
I'm getting better. And also just acknowledging that you're doing good things. So since we're on the road to better teaching, it's like having a passenger in your car.
Yeah.
It's like you need passengers, right?
That's right.
You need fellow road trippers. Mm-hmm. And sometimes those road trippers are experienced road trippers, and they, can give you direction. And sometimes they're just peers alongside you, encouraging you, listening, seeing what you're doing, you're seeing what they're doing. So I think that's a great point. And really important. I just remember being a young teacher and going back to this idea about professional development, we'd whine about it and moan, and be like, we just want to be in our rooms, or like, let us plan with each other.
Yeah.
Like I know there was a lot of asking for time. Now they have a lot more, with PLCs and opportunities for that, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
But we just wanted time to be in our rooms or work with another teacher or work with our fellow third grade teachers and plan something.
Right.
And so teachers are really great at doing things like that, working with each other and planning things together if given time to do it.
Right. Exactly.
And great things come from that type of collaboration.
Right.
Great things come for kids, so.
Just like the great Ted Lasso and Coach Beard. They've got a thing.
They got a thing.
You got any more?
Just the quality of the people we talked to. I just enjoyed talking with the people I already knew and learning a little bit more about them. But then also, like I said, meeting people I did not know, and just the quality of the people we talked to impressed me. The quality of our teacher candidates. They're just fantastic. And I say this all the time. We have the best students on campus because we do. We do. I mean, if you've got students in your classroom and you say, does anybody have, a marker, and they pull out 50 and all of them have markers, scissors, glue, highlighters, staplers, they're organized, they have color,
right.
They're the best.
Yeah.
But they're serious, they're great, they're committed, they're passionate. And then the professionals we talk to, same thing.
Yeah.
Committed, great, serious, passionate, doing good work. So I think just the high quality of the people we talked to, what they had to say, and just the amount of learning that happened for me, listening to others, was fantastic throughout the whole season.
Yeah, and I think as we're wrapping up, I think it's honoring these stories, and so honoring and sharing them at the same time. It's a pleasure to do that, and just I don't know. I think sometimes teachers don't get the best. Well, I'll say it: teachers don't get the best rap all the time.
No.
And so to share these stories and be like, no, this is a teacher. Here you go.
Yeah.
Listen to this.
Yeah, it's impressive. And so I think that for me, that's something that was a standout, just the high quality of the folks that we have in our program, or that we have graduated from our programs, or that we have in our schools working today.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. We good?
We're good, and I'm looking forward to season 2. Do we want to give any sort of what do you say when you like teaser, like when you give a little information about what's coming up, and what do you say? What is that phrase they use, like when you tell what's going to happen in season 2 of a show, or like
a trailer?
No,
I mean, it
like
is a tease.
like you're trying to.
Have you booked somebody?
Well, you had an idea. I was just going to drop a little. Information. Like you had an idea that I really liked.
Well, I've been
there might
teaching
be
all day. I can't remember anything.
So in season 2, folks,
In season
what
2,
we're trying to say
coming up,
is that there's going to be maybe a little twist on things, and you might hear from people that you don't expect to hear from.
Oh, yeah.
So there are great teachers in all walks of life doing different kinds of teaching. So I think we're going to maybe have a guest or two that you might not expect us to have, who may have something really awesome to say about teaching.
Yeah.
So I think you'll see some things in season 2 that you didn't see in season 1.
That's right. I did have a great idea.
You did have a great idea. I can't remember how to say it, though. So that'll stay the same from season 1. I won't remember the word I'm supposed to use or how to say something. All that's the same.
There you go.
But I think we'll have some kind of different takes on who we might invite, some different folks.
Yep.
And some of the same types of folks we had last time, with some pre-service teachers from different programs, some educational leadership folks that are going to be training to be principals and administrators in schools, and then some other types of teachers. So I'm looking forward to a great new season, and I hope you guys are too.
Yeah. So, thanks to you, Ann.
Thanks to you, Joel,
for sharing some of this, our own mile markers on our road to better teaching.
Absolutely. And thanks to all of you out there who've been listening and tuning in to the Road to Better Teaching. This episode may be over, but the Road to Better Teaching never ends. Please subscribe to the podcast so you're notified when the next episode's ready for a listen. And if you like what you hear, please rate and review the podcast.
You know what? You can also share the podcast with someone you feel may be interested in these stories of teacher development. You can check out the show notes for this episode at roadtobetterteaching.com. And finally, thank you to all of you listeners out there for taking the journey to better teaching. This world is a better place because you have used the gifts you have been given to teach others. And just saying that this podcast is an Amidon Planet production.